Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today at the concluding session for the iSchoolConnect Fest's second day. Okay. So this is a very important session like the previous ones have been. And again, what we have selected for you towards the end is also a very important aspect. Plus, it comes at a later stage of your application process or your entire study abroad application process. So today we are going to be discussing how you can actually, what are the advantages or how you can actually decode the visa and immigration process during these COVID times. Of course, COVID is still out there and a lot of countries have still some great restrictions in place. Yes, of course, most of these restrictions are getting eased with time. But again, we are still in that phase of uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty around us, again, in terms of vaccination, in terms of travel, in terms of being on campus as well. But that shouldn't stop us from aiming high. Okay. And the objective of this session, as well as our esteemed panelists who will be joining us today, their aim will be to help you smoothly glide, make it a buttery process for all of you with the visa and the immigration process. So let's wait for a few seconds and we'll shortly start this wonderful session with the introduction to our esteemed panelists. So feel free to say a hi, hello in the chat section. You might find it at the bottom of your screen if you're joining on your mobile phone, or if you are joining through your laptop, you'll find it on the right side of your screen. So say a simple hi, tell us which city are you calling from, are you joining us from, and we'll get started shortly. Okay, let me just log in as well onto the chat section so that I can see who all have joined us today. Okay. Okay. I already see a lot of highs coming in. Hi, Rahul. Hi, Anjali. Okay. Hi, Kunal. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, we have Priyanka. Hello, Priyanka. Hi, Prachi. Thank you for joining us. Great. We already see a lot of people saying hello. And let's get started. Let me introduce you to our very first, very wonderful set of guests who have joined us today. Joining us again today, we have Colleen, who's joining us from Clarkson University. Just recapping on Colleen's introduction, she's Senior Director and for graduate recruitment and enrollment marketing. Glad to have you back, Colleen. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Looking forward to this. Yep.
Absolutely. We are also joined by Lisa, who represents Ferris State University. She's Assistant Director at the Office of International Education. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us again at the third edition of the iSchoolConnect Study Abroad Fest.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here and look forward to our discussion.
Okay. And lastly, but not the least, we have Rupali. Again, you all, I'm sure, once you get familiarized with iSchoolConnect, you'll be seeing Rupali a lot. So Rupali is our head counselor and a study abroad mentor at iSchoolConnect. She's helped thousands of students such as yourself choose the right universities, glide through the entire study abroad process. So glad to have you here, Rupali.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Happy to be here.
Okay, so jumping right into business. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? So we are going to talk about the student visa. We're going to look at the student visa from a variety of perspective. We're going to look at student visa at the US, Canada, UK, Australia, and our panelists will be sharing a lot of details regarding the immigration process, regarding what flexibilities you get if you're on a student visa, and of course the application process also. As always, for all people who are joined us in this session, there's an exciting giveaway for all of you. So sit back, relax, have your pen and paper ready, so that, again, there'll be a lot of information that will be thrown in your direction. So I hope that you all have enjoy and have a good time during this session. Okay, so beginning with a very interesting poll. Which is your dream study abroad destination? So use the poll section on your screen available, so that we get a sense where primarily our audience is from. Okay, so you'll see a lot of options in the poll section. Can we have the poll, please? Can we go live with the poll? Yes, you'll see the poll live on your screen. So we have options such as the US, UK, Canada, Germany, and several other options as well. If you have any other preference, you can even go ahead with the others option. Okay, so select whatever you're familiar with, whatever you feel that is your dream destination. And let's take another 15-20 seconds. I already see some results pouring in. So just start inputting your data and take another 15 seconds to input that data. Okay, I already see a lot of results pouring in. And of course, as usual, as expected yesterday as well, US tends to be among the top destination, top preference as well. I see Canada and UK among the second most preferred, slightly far away from the US, but not that far away as well. But new entrants, of course, Germany is a great entrant in this space. A lot of students have selected others as well. So perhaps Rupali can throw some light on those others, which primarily I hope will be Australia, certain European countries. So we'll be covering a lot about these as well. Okay, thank you so much for the poll. We'll jump right into the assessment. Basically have some information from our panelists as well. Beginning with Colleen. Colleen, if you can throw some light on your specific school, tell us about Clarkson University.
Well, I'm happy to. Clarkson University is located in New York State, in the northern part of New York State. We're not far from the Canadian border, so we're actually quite far from New York City. We're located in the town of Potsdam, and there are several other colleges and universities located in the area, so it gives the students that typical college town American experience. We have about 5,000 students, with 1,500 or so of these being postgraduate students. And right now there are about 400 international students, and India is always one of the top 2 sending countries to Clarkson. So we're a research-based university, and I can answer other questions later. I could go on and on.
Got it. For the brief introduction. Lisa, if you can tell us about your school, which is Ferris State University.
Yes, Ferris State University is located in Michigan. So we're in the north part of the United States, and Ferris State University is a comprehensive university with about 10,000 students. And we have students who study with us from over 30 different countries. Different than Clarkson, we are a teaching university, very much focused on career preparation with hands-on practical training. So we do have some graduate programs, but we are primarily a bachelor degree institution. Our faculty are often coming to us from industry, so they bring a lot of practical experience to the classroom. We have very small class sizes, and again, students have opportunities through internships, lab work, to get a lot of hands-on practical experience and enter the workforce ready to go. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Jumping right into the topic for today, right, which is of course understanding the various types of process that a student needs to go in order to attain an international or a student visa. So we'll begin with the US visa. So Lisa, share your thoughts. Again, what sort of visas are available? What does a student needs to know in order to apply for a US visa?
Okay, excellent. So my role at Ferris is working with, I'm the primary immigration advisor. And so I work with our incoming students on the visa process. Most students who are coming to the United States are seeking degrees. So they're coming here to graduate with a degree. So they typically come on an F1 student visa. Some students come for a semester or a year-long exchange program or some unique agreements with different universities, and they typically come on the J1 exchange program. Today, we're going to focus on the F1 visa because that's primarily what students are using. So we are going to talk about the process, and Colleen and I both have experience, obviously, with the U.S. immigration system. The Canadian system mirrors the U.S. in many ways, so we'll just kind of talk about some of those generalities at the end, but we are going to focus in depth on the following topics that you see on the screen here. So I'm going to begin by explaining, kind of how you qualify to study on a visa in the U.S., and then Colleen will jump in and share some thoughts as well. So when you are looking at schools in the United States, I mean, obviously you're focusing on finding the correct program, the program that meets your needs, the school that meets your needs. But you do have to consider that in order to join us here, you do have to obtain a visa in order to enter the United States. So one thing that's important to look at is, when you are entering the United States on a visa, you do have to be studying in face-to-face classes. So those are the types of questions you want to ask when you're looking at programs. You can study online from outside the US, but in the US, you do need to be in face-to-face classes. So when you are admitted to a university, the next step after you achieve your academic admission is to qualify to apply for a US visa. And so we, the admissions office or the immigration office from the university will supply you with an I-20 immigration document. And this is a document that allows you to apply for an F1 student visa. And in order to qualify to get the I-20, of course, you have to be admitted to the university. And then you also have to provide, your identification information. So we will need a copy of your passport. So if a passport is something you have not obtained yet, I encourage you to get that as soon as possible. It just makes everything a lot easier in the process. And then you also do have to provide evidence that you have enough funds to support your education in the US. So every school will estimate the cost of 1 year of studies, and that will include your tuition, your room and board, and any other required expenses such as insurance, textbooks, the types of things that will be mandatory for you to be able to afford. And so oftentimes students who are familiar with this process will contact a school and say, how much does your I-20 cost? You're not purchasing an I-20, but what you're doing is you're trying to find out how much money you're going to have to demonstrate that you have available for your education. So the school will start out with their top estimate amount of the I-20, and then they will reduce that by any scholarships that you are awarded through the admission process. And so if you do not receive a scholarship, then you do have to provide evidence that you have funds for 1 year of study according to the estimate that the school gives you. So you will supply bank statements, financial statements, or sponsorship letters. If you own the bank statement, then you will provide the bank statement in your name, but often students are not the owners of bank statements with that large amount of money. So if you have a sponsor, such as a parent or a relative, perhaps a company is sponsoring you or a scholarship organization, you will have to provide a sponsorship document or a letter as well, according to the requirements of the university. So once you provide that information and the school collects evidence that you do have funds available, the I-20 will be shipped to you. And then you will then follow the next steps, which will help you then apply for the visa. So when you are applying for the visa, there are a couple steps involved. Number one, you will have to pay a SEVIS fee. You may have heard the word SEVIS, but SEVIS is the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. It's the database that the US government uses to keep track of F1 and J1 student visas. So when you are applying for a visa, you have to pay a fee to join that system. And so that fee will be $350, and you will have to pay that fee before you sit for your visa interview. In addition to paying the SEVIS fee, you will have to fill out a DS-160 form. That's a US government form to apply for a visa. So you will, download that form, complete that form, submit that form with the required payment as well for that form. And then you will gain access at the embassy where you are located to then find an appointment time where you can sit for the visa interview. So you will be required to have an interview at the US Embassy or consulate in your country. Once in a while, students are allowed to do it in a third country outside of their home country, but that is something you have to check on carefully prior to a visa interview. And then you will once you have your appointment, you'll kind of go through and preparing for that interview. So Colleen, maybe you can share with them, what types of things they should prepare for in the visa interview.
Great. That was a wonderful overview of sometimes it seems like a complicated process. So Lisa said when you sit for the interview, it's important to know that at many consulates, you walk up to the window and you're actually standing up. You don't sit down across the table from the interviewer. And at the interview, there might be a number of windows on either side of you. So it can sometimes be a noisy, hectic place. And it's best to kind of prepare for that and be ready to just breathe and take your time. So the visa interview will be conducted in English because part of the assessment that the consular officer is making is whether your English is sufficiently strong to manage your studies in the United States. Oftentimes students are very confused about the paperwork aspect of it, and they bring documents like those, a typical big plastic folder with all of your papers in different sleeves. It's perfectly okay to bring that, but the decision that the consular officer is going to make is based on the interview, not on the papers. So often if a student is not successful, he or she will say, but they didn't even ask me for my transcripts or my bank statements. They have the information about that. They want to talk to you. So the main advice I have about preparing for a visa interview is to explain why you want to study the degree you're planning to do and why you want to study at the institution you chose. Those are the two main questions they will have for you. If you don't have a clear answer, or if it seems like you memorized an answer, that's not good. The main thing is to give your own answer, your own authentic, individual answer. So if you're going to an institution because your brother's best friend went there and had a good experience, say that. I know it's good because I know people who went there. That's a perfectly good answer. If you want to, some questions are a little touchier. If you already have a bachelor's degree and you want to come to the US to get a second bachelor's degree, you have to have a very good answer for that. Because otherwise the consular officer will think, why isn't the person just going to get a master's degree if they already have a bachelor's degree? So it's in rare cases, you'll have a difficult question you might need to prepare for. But the one thing you don't want to do is memorize anything that you see online or anything that some counselor tells you is the right answer. There's no right answer other than the true answer. Answer every question authentically and truthfully. But it's perfectly okay to put the answer in the best possible light, but be truthful. So
I have a question. Again, you mentioned that being authentic is important. Yes, But can I look at the most popular questions or the most frequently asked questions at a visa interview?
Sure. It's good to know what those most frequently asked questions are. And they will ask you about your finances. They will ask you about why you chose the institution you did, why you chose the program you did, and what your plans for after graduation. That's a key question because the US student visa is a non-immigrant visa. So the consular officer wants to know, what do you plan to do when you come home? Because the assumption is that you'll go home after you graduate. What actually happens 2, 3, 4 years down the line might be very different from what you say at the visa interview. But you must have a clear and convincing answer for your plans to return to your home country after your studies.
Absolutely. That's a very vital aspect. Again, I'm sure our viewers know that for students, international students, visa rejection rates are pretty high. Okay, it ranges anywhere from 25% to 45%. So it's important. Preparation is important. Knowing what your real aim is important. And again, communicating it to the person in front of you is also equally important. Okay, if you've put in so much of hard work preparing yourself, preparing your applications, preparing your test scores, but think like the interview session typically lasts anywhere from a minute to a couple of minutes only. And it can actually decide, it can either make or break your future goals. Okay, so preparation is the key. And just a brief information about iSchoolConnect. We have this wonderful tool that we have created where you can actually sit in front of your laptop, turn on the tool, you can answer a couple of questions, and the webcam actually records and provides you feedback on your body language. It analyzes your body language, analyzes your facial movement. It actually analyzes what you're speaking also and gives you feedback in real time. So with repeated practice sessions, you can actually prepare for that final day. So yeah, if you're interested, just you can log into iSchoolConnect and try that tool out for free.
And I think a tool like that is very helpful to students just to kind of practice and kind of get the nerves out of their system as well. You know, and the 3 pieces of advice that I give that mirror what Colleen said is, number 1, why are you going to this school? Why are you studying the major you chose? And why do you need to do it in the United States versus your own country? Second, the financial piece is a little bit important in the respect that you do need to know information about your sponsor. You need to know how much money your sponsor has and earns and how they earn this money. And sometimes with parents and aunts and uncles or children, you know, they don't have those conversations, you know, closely with family members. That's kind of, people usually keep that stuff private, but you've got to be able to understand that because they're going to really want to know that you have the funds now and you're likely to have the funds in the future. And then as Colleen said, it's important to demonstrate what is going to bring you back home after you do study your degree. What ties do you have through property ownership, business, family ties? Those types of things are all very important.
A lot of the students are asking again, what's the duration of the student visa? Is it the duration of the program duration, or does it extend sometimes?
So one thing that's important to know about a student visa, and then the F1 category is a visa category, but it's an immigration status category. And what you need to think about with a visa is think about your visa more as an entry ticket. It allows you to enter the United States in F1 status. F1 status can be maintained even if your visa actually does expire while you are here. So your F1, your I-20 will, if you're coming for a bachelor's degree, will be issued for 4 years. But it's common sometimes in some countries, it depends on the country that you're from, your visa may be issued for 2 years. With COVID, we've seen visas being issued for 6 months to 1 year. And what that means is once you enter the United States, in F1 status, you can be in the United States even with an expired visa, as long as you're maintaining your F1 status. So as long as your I-20 is valid, you can be in the United States. But if you go home for a vacation and your visa has expired, you have to renew to come back. And so what does that mean to, maintain that valid status? What regulations do I have to follow while on a student visa? You have to be enrolled in your courses full-time. For undergraduates, that's 12 credits. For graduate students, that's 9 credits. You have to be studying full-time, and you have to be studying in face-to-face classes. So, 75% of your coursework, or 6 of the 9 credits for graduate students, 9 of the 12 credits for undergraduate students have to be in face-to-face classes. And then you also have to be maintaining progress toward your degree. You do have to maintain good grades. Does that mean you can never make a mistake? No. You're a student, students screw up sometimes, and you do have opportunities to recover, but you can't be dismissed from the university. If you get dismissed from the university, then that is going to impact your immigration status because you are not making progress toward your degree. If you skip your classes and don't show up for a month, they're going to terminate your immigration status. And you also do have to follow the rules about working in the United States. That's often a big question. Can I work in the United States? My parents are funding my education, but it's kind of putting pressure on them. So what can I do? So we're going to talk about that today. Colleen and I are going to talk about the different ways that we can work in the United States while we're on a student visa. One way is you are allowed to work on campus in a part-time job. So you could work in the on-campus dining facility, maybe work in the library, different aspects, maybe be a research assistant. So there are opportunities to work in the United States on campus up to 20 hours a week. But this is only for pocket money. It should not be a source that is paying for your education. You will not earn enough with a part-time job to fund your education. But outside of working on campus to earn pocket money, there are opportunities for CPT, which we're going to talk about, curricular practical training, and then OPT, which is optional practical training. Curricular practical training means when your curriculum requires internships to graduate or offers internships as an opportunity for credit, you can be approved to work off campus. So Colleen, would you like to maybe share? I know CPT is very important for graduate students in particular. Maybe you can share a little bit about CPT process.
Sure. CPT, it's funny that we have these acronyms, but CPT is a great opportunity after your first year of study. You need to have been in the US for 1 year in your academic program to be eligible for CPT. And generally the process of getting that permission, which is written onto your I-20, that you're eligible to work off campus. So you get permission from your academic advisor. That's because this is curricular practical training. It's tied to your studies. It must be approved and it must be related to your major. Then you can find a relevant job, and often the Career Center on your campus can help you with finding that type of internship or field placement, sometimes it's called at the graduate level. Then you go to your international office, whatever it's called at the school where you study, and you request your CPT. There's usually a form you fill out, and you need to provide a copy of the written job offer letter from the place where you're going to work. So an example of CPT at the would be if you're studying computer science or IT and you're going to go work at a nonprofit organization to clean up their database and help them implement a new process for raising money. It's not a computer company, but it's a company where this computer skill that you have is going to be used in a way that helps you reinforce what you've learned in class. And so you could earn CPT for a position like that. It's also important to note that sometimes CPT is paid and sometimes CPT is not paid, but it's essential experience for building your resume so that you'll get a really good job after you graduate. So before you start your CPT, you need to get your updated I-20, and your international office will issue that updated I-20, and it will have the CPT information right on it so that you can show the HR office where you're working that you're authorized and legal to work off campus. But don't start working until the CPT is approved, because that's a big no-no. And the one thing that we always want to do is make sure that your status is always good, so that if you do later in life apply for a green card or apply for an H-1 status, we never want that to be denied because of a technical mistake that we made years ago. So we make sure everything is clear and perfect as we go, and that way those future opportunities will be available.
Yeah, right. And as Colleen said, you know, for graduate students, it's a big part of graduate student program, but for undergraduate students, it really depends on the university that you attend, you know, how many opportunities are available. As I said in the beginning, when I introduced Ferris State, we're very hands-on, practical, career-oriented. So over 70% of our undergraduate students do internships. And so they work for a semester, oftentimes in the summertime, in their field of study. And many of those internships are paid, but as Colleen said, some of them are not. So typically most students will do CPT for a semester. Sometimes they will do it for more than a semester, but if you exceed 364 days of CPT, 1 year of CPT during your studies, then that limits your opportunity to work after you graduate. So you want to look at those opportunities, because we do have another opportunity for work called OPT, which is optional practical training. And again, this is additional work authorization off campus that is primarily used after graduation. There are circumstances where it can be used before graduation, but we'll focus today on the after graduation OPT. And Colleen, would you like to explain how students would, you know, apply for OPT?
Sure. There's kind of a clock with OPT. I think you can apply up to 90 days before the end of the program. So, and it takes time to get the authorization. So students need to decide when to apply for it. It's called optional because it's not, unlike CPT, it's not required, and it comes after you graduate. So with OPT, you don't have to have a job offer in hand in order to apply. The difference with, one of the big differences with CPT is that CPT is handled completely within your university or college. Whereas OPT, you have to apply to the US government, and you actually get a card, a physical card that you can show employers that details your work authorization. So you apply through your university, you get a new I-20 for that, and you apply no more than 60 days after the end of your program. And once you get that EAD, the Employment Authorization Document, you're eligible to work for up to 1 year after graduation. If you are in a field that's designated a STEM field, you can extend that 1 year by 2 more years for a full 3 years of work authorization. And that is all done on your F1 student visa. You're not a student anymore, but you are still on an F1 student visa. Sometimes students get it in their head that I'm an F1 student and then I'm an OPT person. They're not separate things. They're just extensions of the same thing. And the great thing is that once you have your student visa, you don't have to do any more processing other than getting the EAD for your work authorization.
That's a very valid, interesting points. Of course, again, one thing that we that our audience would like to know: are there any limitations to the CPT program in terms of duration? How many hours that they can work per week?
I think most universities try to limit students to part-time CPT when they're in a full-time course of study. We will authorize full-time CPT in the final semester. If a student only needs 3 or 6 credits to graduate, we might authorize full-time CPT. But if you exceed that 364 days, like Lisa said, of full-time CPT, you lose your opportunity for that post-graduation work authorization, and that would be very sad. So that's just my perspective. Lisa, do you have anything to add there?
No. So the part-time CPT, every school does it a little bit differently. So for example, at Ferris State, we don't authorize much part-time CPT. We do the full-time CPT while you are on a summer break, oftentimes during that summer semester or your final semester when that's all you have left to do. And so on part-time, you're limited to 20. Full-time, you're not limited to 40. You can actually, work overtime for your employer as well. And then in OPT as well as CPT, you have to work in your field of study. CPT, it's easy because your program has to give you authorization. If you're studying computer engineering, your advisor is not going to let you cook hamburgers at McDonald's for your internship. When with OPT, you have to find a job. You're responsible for reporting that back to your international office where it is recorded in CVIS. And you do have to demonstrate how that work is aligned with your field of study, because all of it is practical training for what you studied. So you do need to, coordinate with your international office on CPT and OPT. You need to find jobs and get approvals for work related in your field. You do need to be aware of the 1-year limitation on OPT unless you're in a science, technology, engineering, or math program. Then you get those 2 additional years. But the STEM extension comes with a new application to the US government. So there's lots of steps that are involved in CPT and OPT. So long story short, you have opportunities to work part-time on campus while you're studying to earn some pocket money. You have opportunities to gain practical experience before and after graduation. And some of those are paid, some of those are unpaid. Some of the paid ones, depending on the field, pay quite well. But you do need to coordinate with your international office and make sure you are following the regulations, because as Colleen said, if you ever want to change your immigration status in the United States in the future, you want to keep everything as clean as possible so there are no glitches. And so that's why it's very important with students, if you have a family friend who happens to own a restaurant in the city where you're studying, don't work for cash or under the table, as we say. It's not worth the risk. So you want to plan your finances accordingly, understand your opportunities. And because of COVID, there's a few things we did want to talk about. The visa process did slow down significantly during COVID toward the beginning. But this summer, the US government dedicated a lot of resources to trying to process as many student visas as possible. They relaxed some of the rules on renewals of visas so that it would save time for new initial visas, because they did try very hard to get as many students through the F1 and J1 visa approval process for the fall 2021 semester. So we are pretty excited that things are, we're not quite back to normal, but we're moving in a very good direction. So again, work with your office through that process. Sometimes you do have to use some what they call emergency appointments, and F1 students qualify to request an emergency appointment. If, for example, you look and they give you an appointment 9 months down the road, you can have opportunities to request to move that up if you need to start a semester. And so I know we're moving into some ideas from some other countries. As I said, Canada's process aligns very similarly to ours in many ways. It is a little bit different, but Canada, you would request a study permit. And through that study permit process, you do have to show your finances. You do have to have your admission. And then they will coordinate with you on whether your study permit will be processed along with a visa, or whether you don't need a visa, depending on the country that you come from. And Canada has some different opportunities for students to work on campus and off campus. So you would need to coordinate with your school in Canada as well to understand and make sure you're following their guidelines. So we can move on to information about the UK visa process.
Got it. Thank you so much, Colleen and Lisa, for those insights on the US process. we have a lot of questions that we are getting from our students, but we'll take those towards the end of this session. Moving on to a very important country, of course, Lisa, you mentioned briefly about the Canadian process, which is somewhat similar to the US process. But Rupali, if you can throw some light on the UK visa process. I know we have a limited amount of time and we have much ground to cover.
Yes, sure, Vaibhav. Thank you so much. I would first wanted to mention that it is very properly covered by Lisa, and when it comes to the US and Canadian process. Just before I talk about UK, I also wanted to add that for Canadian visa, we basically need to follow the timelines, because for each intake, there is a specific deadline before which the student has to apply for the visa, which is not the case with any country. So when it comes to US, it all depends upon the appointment availability. But for Canada, if we are not following the deadlines, we may end up deferring the entire intake to the next intake. So that's one important aspect. And Canadian visa, specifically for the Indian students, and there are other 5 to 6 countries for which they have introduced this SDS category, which is student direct stream, in which the students are getting the visa in a earlier, like a processing time, wherein you are getting the response within 21 to 30 days. So that is where basically Canadian visa process works like this. Now coming back to UK, it's another hot destination among the international students, wherein I just wanted to update you that basically UK visa, initially we used to call it as a tier 4 point-based visa. Now it has been known by the term as student visa, and it is a point-based terminology, wherein once the student has attained a 70-point structure, that is where the student is qualified to apply for the UK student visa. And this 70 points is basically a combination of their academic and the other details mentioned on the CAS, plus the maintenance funds. So like US, we have I-20. Similarly for UK, it is CAS, which is confirmation of acceptance for your studies. And once you apply for a particular program at undergraduate or the postgraduate level, you get an offer. In case if it's a conditional offer, UK, specifically for UK, you have to meet that condition to go further with your student visa. Unlike US and Canada, where we can still apply on a conditional admit. But then with UK, my offer needs to be converted to unconditional. And then we need to request for the CAS from the university. Once the CAS is issued by the university, officially you are eligible to apply for the visa. So we can apply 90 days prior to the actual course commencement date, if it's a Jan or a September intake. And we need to have that CAS, in which we need to definitely see if our details are correctly mentioned. Similarly like I-20, because if there is any mistake, we should report to the school mentor or the course coordinator to make that correction. And once the CAS is in place, we have the maintenance funds in place, then in where we file the online application for UK, which is basically available on the UK government website, wherein we need to fill up the detailed form like DS-160. There is a UK visa form as well, which we need to fill it up, and then we need to carry a set of documents along with us on the day of appointment. When it comes to the appointment day, there is actually no interview happening right now because of the pandemic. Initially, there was, but the only thing which they are looking at is basically your documents. They are scanning all your documents and uploading to their database. They are checking if you have done with your medical test, which is basically the TB test, the tuberculosis test, which students have to mandatorily do for UK. That's the only test the students are supposed to do it. And they will have your biometrics on the day of appointment. And based on that, they will basically send you back with a notification that we'll keep on updating you about the progress of your applications. So US, I would say the decision happens on the same day. So the students can definitely get to know if it's a reject or an admit. If it's a reject or an accept. But when it comes to UK, there is a processing time. So standard processing time is basically around 21 working days. But UK also have an option of going with a priority and a super priority basis, which is like within 5 working days or the very next day. But yeah, that will cost you additional fees to be paid, unlike other countries. So UK has given that flexibility, wherein even if you apply a little late and you get a response 1 month prior to the course start date, you can still apply for the visa by applying under super priority. Your cost would be the visa fees, which remain similar across all the destinations. As US, Lisa correctly highlighted, it is $350 for the SAVES and $160 for the US. Similarly, for Canada, it is $150 for the visa fee and $85 for the biometric. When it comes to UK, the process is different. It is £348 for the visa fee, which definitely vary as per the pound currency conversion. But other than that, the student is also liable to pay the health surcharge, which is the immigration health surcharge. And that depends upon the program duration. So it's like £624 per year. Imagine if I'm going for a bachelor's program, which is a 3-year program, I have to end up paying the immigration health surcharge for 3 years. So at the time of making the visa fee payment, we need to have that availability within our credit card, because we are making that payment one after the other. So that is a very important piece of information for all the audience here, that this amount of money is what you need to pay. And then the most important aspect is like the funding. So UK doesn't ask you to show the source or the basically the proofs from where this money is coming from. You can show your finances in the form of education loan, the sanction letter from the approved bank. You can even show your finances in the form of fixed deposits or savings account. But the only thing you need to remember is your funds should be minimum 28 days old. So the day it is 28 days old, you are eligible to file for your UK visa. So that's all about UK.
Rupali, a lot of our audience is asking about the process in most of the European countries. Okay,
Yes.
if you can throw some light on a few top European countries, that would be really helpful.
Definitely. So I'll start with Germany, which is definitely one of the top destination among our category of these students. Germany follows more or less the similar process like Canada, where we need to block our amount for the living cost. Like in Canada, we have to deposit $10,000 and open up a GIC with Nova Scotia or different banks. Similarly, with Germany, the visa process is, it is highly recommended that you apply to German universities as soon as they open up the application window, because the turnaround time is a little longer as compared to other countries. And the day you get your first admit, even if you are not going ahead with that admit, suppose you're applying to multiple universities and you're still waiting from the one where you are more interested, it is highly recommended to initiate your block account procedures, because once you open up the block account where you will deposit approximately 10,000 euros for the first year living cost, then and where you will have to initiate your health related, like you have to buy the health insurance. You need to go ahead maintaining your funding, because Germany, either the tuition fees is 0 or very minimal. So bank statements for last 3 months is definitely acceptable. The day you get an offer, initiate the block account and schedule an appointment with the visa German visa consulate, because appointments are not that easily available for Germany. And it is a proper interview happening on the day of appointment, where they look at your documents, and the processing time is 8 weeks. So it takes time. There is no deadline to apply as it is for Canada. But Germany, we have seen students even deferring to next intake if they are not applying on time. So this is a piece of information specifically for students looking for Germany. Another destination I want to highlight is about France, wherein the process is 2-step. You need to first clear your visa procedures through Campus France, which is the official body in the France located in India. Plus, once you get a green signal from Campus France that you are all set to initiate your visa process, then and where you have to officially take an interview appointment with the VFS Consulate of France, wherein you need to submit all your documents. And again, the processing time is at least a month. But specifically for France, your accommodation has to be in place, which is not with the other English-speaking countries, right? So with European countries, if it is France, my accommodation papers has to be in place, my air tickets has to be booked, my travel insurance has to be in place. So these information is very important, because as student, as mentor, we would always advise you to book your air tickets once your visa is approved. But for France, that's not the case. We will have to do it prior. And similarly, it happens with other countries, but unlike Germany and France, other countries are still relaxing on their visa procedures, where you just file and submit the application with the consulate, and within a month you get to understand what is exactly the status of your application. So most of the other countries, the university itself helps you to apply for the student visa. So that is how it works with Europe.
Is that so a couple of other destinations, Ireland, I'm sure it's going to be quite similar to France and other countries, right?
I would say it is similar to a country like Canada, where you have to, like Canada is basically looking for funding to be shown in the form of either a full 1-year tuition payment and GIC if you're applying for SDS. If it's Australia, then you have to show the funding, which is minimum of 4 months old. With Ireland, it has to be minimum of 6 months old. So when it comes to these countries, we should start planning our finances as soon as we finalize the universities, not even applying. Once we finalize that this is the list of universities I want to go ahead, let's start focusing on finances, because 6 months we have to keep our funds block in our savings account, right? So sometimes students think that let me first apply, let me get an admit, and then go ahead arranging the finances then and where. The time is such that if you have very recent funds in your account, then there is a question from the visa officer. So funding is very important. We need to maintain 3 to 6 months of funding in our bank statements. And Ireland, I would say they look at very, very minute details, like what exactly are your parents doing, their employment papers, your tax returns, which is not the case with US, UK or Canada. But European countries, specifically including Germany, they also wanted to see your last 2 to 3 years of tax returns.
What I'm assuming, or what I'm getting out of the conversation that we have had today, is that along with preparing for your visas, right, a couple of months prior, you need to have your finances in place, right?
Definitely.
You need to have whatever the requirements are, but you need to start preparing in that direction right away after you get an admit, in order to be prepared for that ultimate documentation or that ultimate visa process. So managing finances, however you are doing it, is it if you're dependent on a sponsor, if you're thinking of a student loan, or if you're even thinking of self-financing, right? You need to have all those regulations. You need to have a thorough study on each of these countries' requirements, because I'm pretty sure what I'm getting is that there's this commonality between all of them, but there are very small nuances which differentiate the process for each of these countries. So make sure that you analyze, you read, you have somebody, perhaps iSchoolConnect, guiding you with all those things. And of course, you have the university representatives who can always guide you through that process. Okay, thank you so much, Rupali, for that insight on European countries, on UK countries, UK as well. So before we move on to the Q&A, we have a bunch of questions, and very interesting questions as well, very valid questions. Re-emphasizing on iSchoolConnect again. So iSchoolConnect is a technology company. We have created multiple AI tools. One of the tools which I mentioned is this a video interview tool, which you can actually utilize to prepare for your university, for your visa interviews. Okay, you sit in front of your laptop, you turn on the tool, and you answer questions, and you get feedback, not only on your body language, but what you're speaking in real time. So with practice, you can actually start preparing for your visa interviews as well. As always, a reminder for all of you, tomorrow we are going to have this wonderful session, a 2-hour marathon, where you will be able to interact with more than 35 universities across the globe directly, where you can take one-on-one counseling, you can interact, ask questions, you can discuss your own individual profiles with them, you can get on-the-spot application fee waivers, you can get scholarships, you can check your eligibility as well through this virtual session. So do join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. IST. So looking forward to interacting with you and seeing you all tomorrow. As promised, we have this wonderful giveaway. So we have created a great set collection of ebooks on some top destinations, which are the US, UK, Canada, Australia, Ireland, where we have listed down all the nitty-gritties that we discussed. Colleen mentioned, Lisa mentioned, Rupali mentioned today, and we'll be sending it to you in your shortly in your inbox. So do take a look at that. Do provide us your feedback as well through these ebooks. Hopefully, they'll be great help to all of you. Also, reminding you all that we have this amazing giveaway for all the students who have attended, who have joined us for these three days, including tomorrow. And all of these all the top 10 students on the leaderboard will be getting iSchoolConnect's Essential Plan for free. And we'll be announcing the results on the 27th on the iSchoolConnect's Instagram. So do follow us on Instagram as well if you want to keep track of the winners. Okay. With the limited amount of time that we have, I have some great questions that our students have asked. One, which resounded with a lot of the people, is that if my visa application gets rejected, what are the next steps for me? So Colleen, if you can throw some light on that.
Oh, you gave me the easiest one. I would say that students are eligible to appear again for a new visa interview, and they can be assured that they would not appear before the same consular officer for a US visa interview if they go for a second time. So they would be able to start fresh with somebody new. But the new interviewer would have the notes from the previous interview and would know what the concerns were. So you would want to prepare carefully for the visa interview. They're not under any obligation to tell you why your earlier visa was denied. So you need to reflect back carefully on what they asked you and how you answered. And my advice would be to really think about those questions of the quality of your funding and the answer about your plans for returning back to India after completing your degree, because those are the top two reasons that visas are denied.
Got it. Lisa, in your experience, I'm sure you have interacted with hundreds of students, international students specifically. What are the most common reasons of rejection that you have witnessed? Colleen mentioned, which is finance.
I think as Colleen said, finances are a big one. So they want to make sure that you have the funds now, and then ideally will continue to see funds available to you to complete the degree that you are seeking. So when the sponsor is not a parent, that's one of the things that is harder to overcome. So you need to make sure you can explain the connection to your sponsor and make sure you know what your sponsor does for a living and know some of those details. And also a big one is, if they're not convinced that you do not have immigrant intent. As Colleen said, many students do end up staying in the United States and working or becoming permanent residents or even citizens, but you are applying for a non-immigrant visa, and that's what you have to demonstrate at this point. So make sure you clearly can demonstrate what you're going to, what it is that's going to bring you back to your country. And oftentimes a lot of students, I see them try to explain this by, oh, I want to come back and help younger students, with my example. That's something that doesn't always work. They really want to see what your ties are, what does your family do there? Where do they live? What do they own? Those types of things. And then Colleen did mention, if you are seeking a degree, a second degree at a level you already have, that's a big challenge to overcome. So you've got to have a very good explanation and rationale for why you are seeking a second bachelor degree, if you currently have one.
Got it. Rupali, a popular question, right? Do European countries also require interviews? And if yes, how are they different from what Colleen and Lisa mentioned, specifically from the US?
Yeah, so I would say not all the European countries looks for an interview, but then yeah, if it is, they just wanted to understand your intentions and your interest towards the program you are studying. But as US is interview-based decision, European countries no. Not even with Canada, I would say. Rest all the non-US destinations, it's purely your documentation. So how you are submitting your documentation, whether it is covering your finances for the entire duration as per the checklist, if you're submitting everything on that, the decision is based. The interview is just a part of the process, but it's not the decision making step.
Got it. Thank you so much, Rupali. Colleen, one more question. There are multiple MBAs in the US with a STEM designation. Okay, do they also qualify for a 2-year additional OPT?
Yes, they would. That's a good question for applicants to ask before they get too far in the admission process and start to become attached to one program or another. It's perfectly okay to write to the admission office and ask if the MBA that you're applying for has a STEM designation and is it eligible for the 2-year extension. Typically, programs that have an emphasis on financial analysis, data science, things like that will have the designation. Programs that focus on HR, marketing, general management, those would not typically have the STEM designation.
Got it. Thank you so much for that answer. That actually brings us to the end of today's session. Yes, there are a lot of questions, but due to limited amount of time and the constraints that we have with respect to time, so I would request you all to come tomorrow and ask those questions directly to the university representatives who will be there from multiple geographies and countries. So do stay with us tomorrow, do join us tomorrow and ask those questions, get some personalized feedback as well. Also, what you can do is get in touch with iSchoolConnect as well. You can actually reach out to us on our social media handles. You can even drop in an email to us. You can even give us a phone call directly on the number which is mentioned on the screen. And yeah, thank you so much, Colleen, Lisa, Rupali, for joining us today and sharing your insights, sharing those great valuable feedback that I'm sure was useful for me. I'm sure it's going to be useful for our audience as well. And thank you again for joining us today. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much.
It's great to be with you.
Likewise, good day to you. Take care.